Hi there, and welcome to this video about using return values with the functions that you create yourself. Now, we're used to using return values, or we're used to using RETVAL, which is the mechanism for doing that in uSource. If we take a look at GFX image load or get image load, we're used to the idea of uploading images and using the return value or using things similar to this, or using it with other functions. Now, as an example, in this case, we've got this code here which is uploading an image called Vicky, or loading image called Vicky Frog, or using an image called Frog from Vicky's user area. It gets placed into a variable here using the return value. Now, this function here returns a value which is either the image the image is loaded correctly, and so the code for that image goes into the variable, or if the image hasn't loaded correctly, then that would return a -1, which is something that we can check for. So what we'd need to be able to understand is, well, how do we use that in our own functions? Because obviously this is hidden from us. We don't get to see the code for GFX image load. So how do we actually use this ourselves? Well, RETVAL is basically like a variable or a global variable that we can use, that we're allowed to use and access. We know we're allowed to use it and access it because we're able to set our own variables equal to it. But what we probably haven't done so far is actually set the value for RETVAL ourselves. So that's what we're going to be showing in this tutorial. So if we go back to an app I was previously working on. Now I've got a function here called square me, and we have a parameter to that which is number to square. And so what this does is it takes that parameter, or the value that's been passed, okay, and it's going to square that, okay, by multiplying it by itself, and then at the moment it's going to do a GFX write. Now that's quite inflexible. What it means is at the moment I've got no choice what to do with this. All I can do is effectively just write the number. I'm not able to use that value in my calling code, which is not really what we want from functions. What we'd like to do is to square the number and pass that result back to the calling code, and then the calling code can decide what to do with it. So what we're going to do is, instead of doing this, we're going to put in let RETVAL equal number, okay, because this is the value that, or the variable I'm using in here. So number has been set equal to that value squared, okay, and I can put it in there. So let RETVAL equal number. So what do I do back in my calling code? Okay, well, I'm going to call square me, okay, and then let's say I've got a value so local, let's call it number squared. Okay, so I call square me, and then let, place that in there, equal RETVAL. And then if I said okay, so we can see that's worked. Now we might look at that and go, well, I don't really see what the point was. Well, the point is now is that because I've got this value back in my calling code, I could do other things with it. I could use it in calculations. I could do well, all sorts of things with it. Okay, but it's now up to me what I do with it in my calling code, which means that this function has served its purpose and becomes more useful because I'm not forcing it to be done in a particular way. I'm returning a number to the calling code, and then the calling code can decide what it wants to do with it. So that's how to use return values with your functions that you create. So basically, we, just like any other assignment to a variable, we say let RETVAL, which is the, if you like, the variable on the left hand side of the equals, equal the number on the right hand side. So the number or variable on the right hand side or the value on the right hand side gets placed into the variable on the left hand side of the equals. And how we do that with our calling code is we call the function, we pass the argument to the function. In this case, this is one argument to match the one parameter that we've got there. Okay, and then we'd say let number squared, okay, in this case this is this variable, let the variable equal the return value. So very similar to how you've used return values with your library functions. It's just this time we're actually setting RETVAL ourselves inside the function that we've created.